National Trust is famous worldwide for its stunning properties, but its gardens and landscapes are equally spectacular. I'm Jane Moore, and in this new series with the National Trust's official partner STIHL, I'll be going behind the scenes to see just what it takes to maintain and manage these amazing spaces. Today I'm here at Dyrham Park near Bath in the southwest of England. Let's go and meet the head gardener, Piers.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, Piers. This garden and the house as well have had a really checkered history, haven't they?
Yes, we've got a really long history at Dyrham. Actually dates back to 6th century where the name Dyrham comes from. But we really focus on the 17th century here when there was a time of a Dutch king. So the entire garden is created and telling that story of allegiance to William III, and what better way to do that with a very formal baroque-style garden.
Absolutely, and I think that half the garden has sort of kind of been lost through time, hasn't it? But it was incredibly formal, lots of terraces and fountains, and you've recreated part of that, haven't you?
Yeah, so they were the best gardens, as they were referred to. Some people even said better than Chatsworth. But they were lost. They were quite high intensity to look after, and they started decaying really early on. So by the time National Trust acquired it in the early 60s, most of the garden had been lost. So we've just been working to recreate that formality, that Dutch baroque-style garden throughout.
And have you got a lot of staff that are helping and volunteers and things? Because it's a big property, isn't it?
Yeah, so in the garden we're about 12 acres. I've got 6 garden staff, an apprentice, and about 65 volunteers. So we've got quite a decent team here.
Absolutely. So what are some of the aspects that you've been trying to recreate? You mentioned the parterre that we're standing on, but there's some other aspects, isn't there? The lovely herbaceous borders that I've just walked down.
Yeah, so we've got our parterre embroidery here, so an embroidered parterre, but we've also got the avenue, which is another part that we've restored in the garden. It's essentially an art gallery for gardening and topiary. Also in there we have 112 apple espaliers that we have on frames as well.
And they're quite elaborately trained. They're not just your standard espaliers, are they?
We very much subscribe to the Lorette style of pruning, so we love our detail, maybe too much. But yes, we have quite a lot of detail on how we manage those.
I don't know anything about the Lorette style of pruning, so I think we better go and have a look and you can explain it to me.
Okay, I'll come and show you.
So it's quite a collection of apple trees that you've got here, Piers.
Yeah, it's about 112 apple trees here on the avenue alone. These are all part of the Tidnor collection. They were rescued from a housing development in Worcestershire. We took cuttings, we propagated them, and now they're on display here in the garden. That
explains why you've got such unusual varieties. I mean, there's one that's called sort of Arlingham Schoolboys and Oaken Pin.
Oh, Slap McGirdle's my favourite.
I'm not surprised, yeah. And this one's a bit of a beauty, isn't it? Red Styre.
Yeah, look, we've got really good cropping on this, and this is indicative of like how much you can actually get a lot of apple trees in quite a small space.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's great for a small garden, isn't it? Because you actually get more crop than you do for size, than you do from a bigger tree.
Yeah, definitely. So you don't need lots of space, and your apples don't need to be high in the air. Actually, you probably want them lower down anyway, so you can reach them when it comes to harvesting.
Absolutely. And I love the shapes that they're pruned in. This is a sort of beautiful lattice trellis work shape.
Yeah, so we've got lots of different designs here. Obviously, we've got this lattice, we've got this crossing over of them. But as I mentioned before, we've got this Lorette style of pruning.
Oh, yes, I'm fascinated by that.
It's a very old method. It's just a way of different designs that you can work with fruits. So here's one that we've got this big spiral design that we've been working on, and you can even get the spirals to go all the way around.
Wonderful. And it obviously takes quite a bit of training. That new piece of growth has just been tied in beautifully, hasn't it?
Yeah, so it's quite labour intensive. Obviously the plant wants to grow all over. So we're really getting our eye in on the buds. We're making sure the leading ones, we're tying them in while they're young and soft, so we're not snapping any branches.
And as they get older, they'll produce these little fruiting spurs, won't they? Which is where the apples are formed.
Yeah, so we try to keep to these spurs and make sure, you know, we're going back to the buds which actually produce fruit. We've got the curved buds and we've got the pointy buds. So we've got the leaf buds, the fruit buds. We're trying to bring it down so we're just having the fruit really close to the stem.
Which makes it a great plant for a small garden. But I must admit, I've only ever done them in the classic sort of espalier shape where they all go out straight. It's a lot easier.
It's a lot easier. We do have some of those classic ones around Dyrham as well. But we just like to be a bit inventive and play around.
Absolutely, it's wonderful to see. And of course they make great screens and barriers for the garden as well, don't they? Sectioning it up.
Yeah, so we like to separate the bits of the garden, like garden rooms essentially, and this is one great way of doing a barrier.
But of course you've also got a lot of hedges and they make great screens and sections for the garden too, don't they?
Yeah, so we clip a lot of hedges. I think it's over 3 kilometres of hedging that we have here to clip.
That's a lot of hedge cutting.
It is a lot of hedge cutting.
And all different varieties. Can we go and look at some of the different,
let's go and look.
Types of hedges you've got? This is one of my favourite parts of the garden at Dyrham Park, the cascade.
Yeah, this is really significant because it's part of the surviving 17th century garden, the cascade. And it's where the underground river comes out into our pools.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's framed by these hedges, which adds to the sort of formality of the area.
Yeah, we really wanted to kind of get that flow of the land really and capture some of that, but equally kind of keep every bit of the garden enclosed in some way. So yeah, we've got different height hedges, different varieties of hedges.
You've got a lot of different hedges actually, haven't you? You've got anything from sort of down by your knees to right up by your head. And as you said, all different sorts of varieties, evergreens, deciduous, just loads and loads of different ones. Tell me a bit about some of the varieties and why you've got so many.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the reason why we've got so many is because of the issues of box these days. Box tree moth is on site and there is box blight. So we can't rely on Old Faithful anymore. So we've planted a lot of mixture of yew, prunus and euronymous to kind of have quite a mixture. I quite like the different colours as well. Box is a little bit brighter and it's nice to have some darker areas and some lighter areas to match, you know, some of that context.
But cherry can be quite difficult, can't it, to cut in that they have larger leaves, don't they? Cherry laurels and the prunus autolycan, I think, is this one.
You're all right. So we've actually bought some different tools recently. So we've got a larger tooth hedge cutter that actually goes on slower revolutions as well. So it's a slower cut, it's more ponderous, but it works better with laurel because it gives the leaves a chance to spring back before they're cut, so you're not cutting through so many leaves as much. We're just trying to reduce how much we have to do by hand. There is so much hedge work here.
I was going to say, well, I was always taught at college with cherry laurel particularly because the leaves are so large to literally cut it by hand by secateurs, but you've just got how many kilometres of hedge?
We think it's about 3.5 kilometres of hedge, so there is a lot of hedge to cut.
You do not want to be cutting that by hand, do you?
No, definitely not.
And you've got some quite interesting box replacements for really short hedges, haven't you?
Yeah, so we looked into a few options. Believe it or not, we've actually tried Ilex crenata before. I don't think it likes the limestone around here, so that was a bit unsuccessful. So we brought in Euronymous japonica Gene Hughes. A lot of people like Green Rocket, which is quite an upright one, but Gene Hughes has that little bit of more sideways growth on it, and which really helps us get those really low hedges. So that's what we've been experimenting with now, and it's filling out quite nicely. I'm quite impressed.
But also I noticed that you've got some yew cut shorter than I have ever seen yew cut.
Yeah, yew responds really well. We can keep it quite low to the ground, quite suppressed, and it just does spread out quite nicely. It's got a good habit to it, so yew works really well. And no matter what anyone says, some people call yew slow growing, but I mean all our hedges are 8 years old at most. So, you know, even this hedge behind me, you know, it's grown in 8 years. Yew is not a slow-growing plant in my mind.
Do you know, I think you're absolutely right. A lot of people think that hedges are a very slow option, you know, for boundaries and things like that. And I completely agree with you. They can be really fast. But I'd really like to go up and have another look at those double herbaceous borders, because they've really got a lot of colour still going on. And I want to pick up a few sort of tips and ideas of things to do in my garden at this time of the year.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's go and
Let's
have a
go
look.
I really love these double herbaceous borders, Piers, but one of the things that's really surprised me is that your lavender is actually just coming into flower and looking at absolutely at its best now.
Yeah, so maybe a bit controversially, but we Chelsea chop our lavender because we don't really need that extra colour in the summer. Now is when we need it. So, you know, to get really nice and thick and really coming up this time of year, yeah, we cut them back in May. That's
really interesting. I've never thought to do that, but it looks absolutely great. And as you say, this is kind of when you need it, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's stretching out that season. That's what we're trying to do. We don't just want to hit it all in the summer. We've got to try and get as long as we can into the autumn.
Yeah, and talking about stretching out the season, I'm guessing you do quite a lot of deadheading as well.
Yeah, definitely. Things like these zinnias are absolutely fantastic, and they're still coming. They've still got new buds on them. So we just want to take those dead heads off, keep the flower colour, keep that colour.
And then they'll keep going as long as the weather holds, won't they?
Yeah, definitely. And then that's when we have to make our decision when we start changing our borders and when we start lifting our annuals.
But I noticed you still left some with flower heads on that have gone to seed. And is that because you're hoping they'll sort of self-seed around the borders a bit?
Yes, this is 4 104-metre borders. They're quite extensive. It's a lot of planting each year. So anything nature can do for us, if we can get some self-seeding and they can give us the flowers for next year, that is perfect. That is wonderful, yeah.
And you use a lot of annuals, don't you, for filling in the gaps? And I guess they're pretty good at self-seeding, aren't they, as well? Things like statice and snapdragons and things. But they're really good gap fillers as well.
They're good gap fillers. Also, we want year-on-year interest. We want different colour each year, reason to come next year and see what's happening. We also have big bulb displays here. So I've got 20,000 tulips on order. I need to make space for them so the annuals come out and the bulbs will go in by the end of the year.
You need quite a lot of space for 20,000 tulips and quite a lot of people helping.
Yeah, all done by hand, so yeah, it's quite extensive work, but this area really screams that Dutch design, that Dutch story, and what's more Dutch than tulips. So come the spring next year, yeah, there's real wow factor in here, real big impact.
Gosh, I really hope I get to come back and have another look in the spring.
More than welcome to come back.
Thank you. Thanks, Piers. And thank you so much for joining us. If you want more ideas and tips from people like Piers, and maybe a few from me, then please subscribe to the STIHL GB YouTube channel for more ideas. See you next time.